Here now with 11-year NFL offensive tackle Marshall Newhouse. We're going to talk some offensive linemen. We want to talk about the game. We've got so many interesting angles we can go on. This time of year, we've been talking about offensive linemen a lot in terms of like draft.
I love it.
And the fact that they move them around at this time of year. Like take a tackle out of college and say like, oh, then you're a guard now. And I'm curious about what your draft experience was like in that regard.
Listen, I played tackle at TCU, and I thought I was going to be a tackle, but I was a short one. So teams were considering, is he a guard or is he a tackle? But listen, my feet, I had long arms, luckily, and then my intellect, I could play all positions, but I wanted to be a tackle first. Later in my career, I played left and right, and then both guards. I was even a backup center at time, so that helped me out. But originally, I wanted to be a tackle because generally they say that you can move tackles in, you can't move guards out. So I wanted to start tackle.
Unless you're Joe Tooney.
Well, shoot, very rarely, but he's one of those guys. I love to talk about him. Joe's great. I played with him in New England, but normally you go out to in instead of in out. Yeah.
So I want to talk a little bit about Joe Tooney, especially given that, because there's been a lot of discussion of given how strong that defensive interior for the Eagles is.
Yeah.
If they would bump him back in, he's probably going to stay at the tackle position. But say that you are going up against that ferocious front of the Eagles, how are you preparing going into the Super Bowl?
Well, listen, Vic Fangio he's not vanilla, but they don't do as much blitzing as Spags does. And so you're just looking at your one-on-one matchups and you're looking at your help. In the offensive line room, we're always like, hey, how do we get double teams? You want 3 double teams. Eventually, some guy's going to be one-on-one, but where are those double teams? Where are we sliding? Where do we think pressure could be coming from if they're rolling safeties? And so a guy like Joe knows that because he's been in the interior. I've even seen him play center in the pinch. But he understands that on the edge it's a little bit different. And so if the Eagles D-line, what they're going to be doing is trying to isolate Jalen Carter. That is the big deal, is finding mismatches most likely on the guards, whether that's getting the center to commit left and getting him one-on-one, or getting the tackle a little help and being isolated on defensive end. They're looking for isolations, similar to the way Chris Jones matchup hunts, but it's more interior focused.
I'm seeing as you talk about all of this stuff, some bling here flying around.
This is the first day I brought it out. We've had shows all week, but we had the Lombardi Trophy on our set. I was like, it felt appropriate. It felt like the right time. So
I mean, if you can't bust it out this week, when can you?
Truly,
right?
It stays in the safe, and I love looking at it, but it's never something I wore a lot. But this is the week of all weeks to do it.
Yeah, but it's a true badge of honor because not everyone understands the rigors of the Super Bowl game. It's very different than any other game. Can you walk us through that?
Yeah, listen, everything's on the line, and they say, when you get in the playoffs, everything, is more intense, and literally all the mistakes get magnified. And so your understanding of every moment, every pass protection all the ways we're communicating, there's just an extra added element, and every turnover weighs even more. I mean, I think these teams are really high in turnover margin, but the Chiefs, they lost 5 fumbles last week and they still won, which is bizarre. But you're so cognizant of all the little things, but you also want to play free. You don't want that to bog you down, but that comes from the preparation. Both teams had a lot of good practice last week. This is not the week to do all that. This is the week for mental. They're doing a lot of walkthroughs, a lot of situational prep, third down, red zone, goal line, special teams. But everyone is dialed into every mistake counts, and I think specifically the Chiefs and their run, they've done such a good job of waiting for the other team to make a mistake, and then Patrick Mahomes pounces. And so if you're the Eagles, you're doing everything you can, stay on schedule, do what you need to do, but don't make the big mistake.
Patrick Mahomes has been running a lot more in the playoffs than he did in the regular season. Is there anything like that you think we see on Sunday that is something that maybe is something different against this Eagles team than what you would expect?
Listen, he's running on purpose. He scrambles a little bit more in the playoffs traditionally, but especially with the Joe Tooney move, their run game has been stagnant. They have not been running, even with Kareem and Pacheco.
I don't know why I hadn't thought about it from that point of view. I thought about it from Pacheco coming back and not being the same. I'm glad that you said that because it just sort of reframed.
Right. Ever since Joe moved out, it's the run game has kind of hit a hiccup a little bit, and that's okay, but they make up with it in different ways. So you saw the opening drive against the Bills, multiple RPOs, short screens and passes. Andy Reid loves screens. And so they're doing other things to augment that. The run game is just not the way they want it. So they're going to give carries to the running backs, but Pat's going to also be very constant that I'm going to pick up yards. I'm going to get down, even if it's 5 yards. That means we're in 2nd and 5 or 3rd and 1. That's them staying ahead of schedule with that little game within the game that adds up over time.
Yeah, I like that you highlighted that too, because it seemed like when it got in the clutch, they ran a read option, which they very rarely do with Patrick Mahomes. Did in the red zone, paid off on him.
Yeah.
I feel like the things that you're saying here, in terms of the small things
Sure.
about the Chiefs and the Patrick Mahomes and turning it up a notch and all that kind of stuff, are you feeling Chiefs to win this game?
Yes. And so, but listen, we spent all year, people were almost like criticizing the Chiefs for winning tight games.
Yeah.
I'm like, guys, this is intentional. They're doing this on purpose because they have the experience and they have Pat. They know what they're doing. Yes, they're not the Tyreek Hill years where they're bombing you over the top, but teams adjusted to that. Teams are playing shells against them, making them dink and dunk and earn everything. They've had some really good running games this season, but then ultimately they are doing what they need to do to win. And sometimes that doesn't look pretty,
Right.
but to me, it's very much intentional. They know what they're doing. Absolutely.
Low average depth of target, high yak. They are
Yes.
third in the league in yards
Yes.
after the catch.
Absolutely.
And it's systemic.
Yes.
Which tells a Patrick Mahomes story to me.
Absolutely.
Good stuff. Marshall Newhouse, thank you so much for your time.
Oh, pleasure. Thank you.